Hey, this is Scott, and today we're going to take a first look at this Tamron 150-600mm G2 lens. If this is your first time to this channel, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out my other videos and subscribe if you want to see more in the future. This is going to be the first in a series of videos about this lens, and today I'm just going to talk about kind of my first impressions, the overall design and build quality, and just some of the very basic things that I've thought of upon using this lens over the past couple of weeks. I'll have an image quality video, which will touch much more in detail about the image quality, of course, and also a final review, which will kind of wrap over everything and also touch on a few final details that I haven't mentioned yet. So if you want to see that, click on screen now or down in the description below. I will post links to them when they are ready. So getting onto this lens, it is surprisingly small and lightweight compared to its focal length. I wouldn't mind carrying it around, hand holding it, but a tripod or a monopod definitely helps if you're going to be carrying it for a long period of time, or even just if you can bring it, it definitely helps. I appreciated using it on a monopod during a festival that I shot last week. Compared to a 70-200 though, for example, it's actually not much bigger, and it's not much heavier. It is heavier and it is bigger, especially when you zoom it all the way out. The barrel does extend, but it's not really a whole lot bigger, and this could even fit inside of my Peak Design 20-liter backpack, so it's definitely portable compared to what I think a lot of these super telephoto lenses would be. It does feel well made, similar to the other G2 lenses that Tamron has released, like the 70-200, which I also have a review of. I'll put the link on screen now. It's got that cool, simple new design, very sleek, very minimal. But it does still take on fingerprints and stuff like that a lot easier, and it can be a little bit more slippery when your hands are sweaty, so just be careful of that. It is weather sealed, although I didn't have a chance to test it, I guess luckily, but it is weather sealed. And these switches do bother me more than they did on the 70-200, but I'm not carrying this around on a strap as much as I would a 70-200, so I guess that doesn't matter as much. But if you are carrying it on a strap, these switches will definitely get switched off much more easily than even the 70-200 did, which was already really annoying. If you are going to be carrying this around on a strap, I recommend you tape over the switches like I have it here. Obviously, you can't quickly or easily access the switches, so it's not ideal, but it does work. So as I mentioned, I did shoot a local festival here in Kochi with this last week. It's called the Yosakoi Festival. I'll put some clips up on screen now, but basically it's like a big parade where a bunch of huge teams from all over Japan come and dance in the streets following these trucks that just blast music as loud as they can possibly do it. It's a pretty intense festival. It's like over 100 degrees every day, and these people are out there just dancing as hard as they can. It's really pretty interesting to watch because you're right up there with the action. But I was carrying this lens around quite a bit. They dance in a bunch of different places around the city, so I was moving from one place to another, and I was carrying this with me. I carried it in my backpack like I mentioned, and it worked just fine. It is a little bit heavy, but I could do it for all day in over 100-degree weather, 2 or 3 days straight, so it's definitely doable. It's not the most miserable lens to bring with you. Compared to its focal length, again, I would not hesitate to bring this out to some kind of event or just for a full day of shooting if that focal length is what you need. As you can see in these clips though, the zoom ring does have a little bit more resistance than I would like, and it takes a long time to really zoom it from minimum 150mm all the way out to 600mm or back and forth. For some people it might not matter so much. I was hoping to zoom in and out quickly because these teams were passing by fast, so for how I was shooting, I would prefer to have a little bit less resistance. Of course, that does help with the zoom creep. For me, it didn't really matter because there is a push to lock on the zoom ring, which is really convenient. You can lock it in place at any position. It's not perfectly locked, but it will stop the zoom creep. So I think with that feature, the actual resistance of the zoom ring could have been reduced a little bit and I would still be okay with it. Again, others might not be, but just for the way I was using it, I would have appreciated that. Of course, there is also a lock which locks it 100% in the 150mm position, so you don't have to worry about it extending by itself when you're putting it in your bag or carrying it around with you. Along with this G2 design, you get the awesome new G2 foot, which has the Arca Swiss compatibility. It's really nice to not have to think about bringing another accessory with you. You can just throw this onto a tripod or monopod as it is without having to put anything else on there. It's really useful, and I really do appreciate having it in this and also in the 70-200. So the front element is pretty huge, and so is the lens hood, but I would definitely recommend using the lens hood to keep that front element protected. The lens hood itself is pretty good quality. It's pretty much on the same level as the 70-200 lens hood. It has a little bit of a rubberized texture on the outside actually, which is kind of nice, gives you a little extra grip when you're trying to get it on there because it is so large. I'll get more in detail with this in either the image quality or the final review video, but the aperture on this was a little bit disappointingly limiting for me. Even on a sunny day or especially on a cloudy day, the f5 to 6.3 aperture was a little bit small. I was shooting this a lot at or near 600mm or just generally the longer end of the focal range, and I think a lot of other people will too, so to keep that shutter speed high enough, I did boost my ISO very high in a lot of situations, higher than I would have liked to. Again, I'm using the 5D Mark IV, so it's not much of a problem. I didn't worry about it too much, but with other cameras you might, and I would definitely not want to choose this lens if it was getting dark, like evening time or especially at nighttime or indoor sports. It will definitely limit you with your shutter speed and ISO. Also, up to about 200 or 300mm, I really don't think this lens is worth it, to be honest with you. The f5 or even higher, depending on how far you zoom in, is a little bit limiting. And again, the size in that combination, I wouldn't use it for that focal length. I would choose the 70-200 f4, for example, which is in the same price range. So if you're not using it for the longer focal lengths, I would not recommend this lens. But again, if you jump over 300, 400, 500, 600mm, then this lens is a lot of fun to shoot with. And you do start to get some good background blur, especially at those longer focal lengths. So if you're using it at the longer focal lengths, it is limited because of the aperture on the situations that you could use it in, but it is enjoyable to use. That makes me wonder a little bit if this would have been better off with a little bit more limited focal range, like a 300 to 600 instead. They could have made some improvements in other areas, perhaps like the size or the weight or the maximum aperture or just the overall image quality. So while that focal range might be useful in some situations, I would really be curious to see how it would be in a little bit different focal length. It's a little bit of a side note from this lens, but that also makes me wonder if Tamron will be coming out with any longer telephoto primes in the future. I think it'd be really interesting to see a 300 or 400mm prime, or even longer than that, but I think that now those lenses are pretty much restricted to Nikon and Canon, and I would love to see Tamron or some other third-party lens companies start bringing those out. So back to this lens. If you're looking for something with a little bit of a longer focal length or something that is a little bit easier to bring with you than some other long telephoto lenses, then I might recommend it. Again, not going into image quality yet, I will get into that in a future video. Besides the switches on the side, it's built very well, as are all the G2 lenses from Tamron, and it's definitely a fun and interesting lens to use. Once again, if you want to see more details on image quality or an overall review of this lens, be sure to check back. I will put links on screen and down in the description below when those are ready. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I will get back to you. If you like this video or found it helpful, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching.